What is up, Cowboys Nation? Let me adjust my mic a little bit. It's been a while since I've been on my own channel doing something and actually talking some Cowboys football, not just draft stuff. Um, Stupid thing up here. Sorry. Um, yeah, so Ben Johnson got hired. That was a long shot, anyways, but he's going to the Bears. As far as Cowboys things, the two names circling around right now is Kellen Moore, former Cowboys offensive coordinator, and Brian Schottenheimer, current, or well, I guess you can't call it current because his contract's up, but former offensive coordinator just this past season for the Cowboys. First thing I want to mention, if you want to get on and just talk, you can go audio on the link that I just dropped on Twitter. That allows you to jump in here. I'll put you on the stage. You don't have to go video, but you can talk with me and just discuss stuff. If not, chill out, listen, completely fine. But haven't been talking Cowboys football because honestly, man, it's draining. It really is. It's this team has continued to allow division rivals that formerly were nobody's little stepbrothers make the NFC Championship game with a host of your old players, with a host of your old coaches, Joe Witt Jr., DQ, Floyd, Armstrong, Fowler, Biotish, Noah Igbenogany, Noah Brown. Like I can just keep on going on and on. And it's demoralizing as a fan, but it's even more demoralizing when you have to. Well, I guess I don't have to, and I haven't really been. But when you go and you talk about a team that you're supposed to stay positive about, and you're supposed to give hope and optimism to the fans for, but it seems like you can't muster up the strength to do so. So um, it's annoying to say the least, but it seems as like we're going to get a coach that we're already pretty familiar with, whether it's Brian Schottenheimer, whether it's Kellen Moore, who knows. Deion Sanders was in the talks as far as with Jerry, but he doesn't really seem like a legitimate option as far as what the whispers are, as far as what people are telling you that are tuned into the Cowboys. Um, Brian Schottenheimer. Um, he's probably most known for being the offensive coordinator during the Pete Carroll era of the Seahawks, where he really catalyzed the best season of Russell Wilson's career. I believe it was like 2018 or somewhere in those years where he was playing great. They had the leading rushing attack in the league with Marshawn Lynch. Their defense was still really, really good there, and Russ was not I won't call him a game manager because he was very very good, especially with that deep area of the field with the Seahawks. But it seemed as if they relied on the rushing attack a little bit more. Now that stuff sounds great when you factor in Dak Prescott with his injury issues, with where he's been at as a quarterback. I don't think that you can rely on Dak Prescott to be the guy that's going to take you to the Super Bowl. I'm just being blatantly honest with you guys. I think that where we are right now with Dak Prescott, you have to understand what he is as a player. He's not a guy that is a Tom Brady that can just elevate the people around him and will them to the Super Bowl. He's not going to be able to drag nobody to the Super Bowl, um, which means you have to be willing to adjust your philosophy as the Joneses. You have to be willing to utilize different parts of team building that you haven't utilized in the past. That includes free agency. That includes the trade market. That includes cap manipulation. They have not done that. They only use um, the avenue of draft and develop, and that's a problem. That has been one of the biggest problems. Now, I'm fully aware that trades have burnt this team in the past. You talk about Roy Williams when we traded for him from the Lions. Um, just wasn't good. Never lived up to the hype of what he should have been for the Cowboys. Um, and you can go with the Trey Lance trade. You can go with the Jonathan Mingo trade, which is still pending. But I'll just go out on a limb. I don't think he's going to do anything for the Cowboys. Obviously, that's to be determined. But at the end of the day, I don't think that he's going to be a difference maker. You spent two fourth round picks on those guys. Now, the Brandon Cooks and the Gilmore trades were actually pretty good. And I was excited because it felt like we were rounding the bend to actually utilizing one of those facets that I talked about, which is the trade market. Finding guys that are falling out of favor with a team or a team that just doesn't feel like they're going to compete and actually utilizing their situation to your benefit. Getting a good player on the cheap to come and play for your team. Um, the Cowboys don't do that often enough. The Eagles are very good at that. The Eagles are very good at cap manipulation, and obviously it's going to come back to bite them eventually. But they have made it to 3 Super Bowls in 6 years, I believe. Um, so you've got to take that into consideration. What is the teams in your division doing that you haven't been doing? And that those are exactly the things. The Commanders shifted their entire culture. Dan Schneider was out. They got the new owner. They hired Dan Quinn. They brought in Cliff Kingsbury, which allowed Jaden Daniels to stay more in that college realm of offenses, not going completely pro style, and it's paid dividends in an NFC Championship berth. Now your team is um, the has the longest NFC Championship drought in the NFC. You're supposed to be the biggest franchise in all of football and really all of sports, and you can't even get to an NFC Championship game. That's worse than poor. That's demoralizing as players, um, fans, as anybody associated with the team, and the onus should be upon Jerry Jones and anybody who is affiliated with that organization right now, top to bottom. There's people that I'm on a network with the Grid Network, and we have a big group chat, and we're talking about this stuff, and we're figuring out what needs to happen to get the Cowboys back on track. And um, there's a lot of discussion about Dak. I fully agree. Dak needs to be better, but Dak is not the constant over this 30+ year drought. That is upon the Joneses. Um, it's upon the continued coaches that leave and they have um, good to great careers elsewhere. You remember Wade Phillips, former Dallas Cowboys coach, won a championship with the Broncos, won a championship with the Rams as a defensive coordinator. Think about Sean Payton, former quarterback coach and assistant head coach. He goes on, he wins a Super Bowl with the Saints. Um, Kellen Moore and Dan Quinn, which I kind of mentioned at the top of the show, they've just got burst with to the NFC Championship game with their respective teams as offensive coordinator and a head coach. Um, so you got to figure that out. You've got to figure out what cultural changes you need to make and what changes you need to make at the front office, what avenues you need to explore to further push your team ahead. Because right now, you're not meeting the standards that us as fans have, that anybody in the NFL world have. I mean, when you go top to bottom, and maybe not right now, but over the past however many years in the 2000s era, the Cowboys have had one of the most talented rosters on paper. Regardless of what you think about some of their players, they've had those guys that go on and have stellar careers for other franchises, and you can't always blame the quarterback. We've had Tony Romo in here, we've had Dak Prescott in here, and of course, they're not winning championships. That some of that blame gets put on them. But at the same time, they haven't been a constant over the 30 years like other people in this organization have. Um, I really, really feel pressed to say that Will McClay needs to make his voice heard in this coaching search. Um, if you want to stick and you want to be that draft and develop team, then you need to find a coach that also knows how to scout and knows how to develop. Because if you're bringing a guy in here just to coach, I don't think that that's worked the past however many coaches you've had past. Um, I'm just being blatantly honest. You've got to figure that out. Um, with regards to Schottenheimer, the thing that I like about him, Dak doesn't have to learn an entire new offensive scheme. He doesn't have to completely reset and relearn everything from the ground up. Um, they'll also probably lean a little bit more on the run game, which would help Dak as well. They get those those play action game back into Dak's game, and that can pay super uh, just amounts of dividends whenever it comes to Dak's game. We've seen how he plays. If he's playing under center and made into just a stationary drop back quarterback, he can do that. Is that the best thing that he does though? No. And I don't think that I don't think that that's crazy to say. I think that Dak needs to be able to use his legs, needs to be used in that respect, but in stints. We've seen every single quarterback that has made the championship games this coming weekend. Jaden Daniels, Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, and Josh Allen. All of those guys have a certain aspect of their game that is catered to running the football. Um, and Mahomes is the slightest out of all of them, yet he would be considered the best. So if you can just figure out how to bump Dak from that like 1% range he's used at right now to like 8%, I think that that's going to pay massive dividends in um, trying to evolve this current offense. If Brian Schottenheimer does get this job, um, and you have to tell Jerry, you have to be upfront with Jerry. I think we need to utilize Dak's legs more. Does that put him at a risk of injury more? Absolutely. Does that put him in? Does that put him in regards to some carelessness and some fumbling stuff like that a little bit more? Absolutely. Do we have to rely on um, our wide receivers to get open a little bit more? Sure. I think that that's all a thing that you have to be cognizant about with trying to use Dak's legs. And I'm not just talking about running every single time. I'm talking about getting out of the pocket, getting moved on those bootlegs and stuff like that. Um, you've got to have those wide receivers that can also roll with your quarterback too. I don't think that Jalen Tolbert, I don't think that Jonathan Mingo, I don't think that Brooks are those guys. I think you have to be willing to take a running back, a wide receiver early in this draft. Um, but you just got to be honest with Jerry and tell him like this is what we're gonna have to do, man. Um, we're going to have to figure this thing out. Now, if you go with Kellen Moore, you're returning to an offense you're familiar with for Dak. So it's not you're going to be learning a new offense, don't get me wrong, but you're familiar with the stuff. You're familiar with some of the terminology and stuff. So it's not a complete reset either. I like that from that standpoint. Kellen supposedly already has a lot of his staff filled out if he were to get a head coaching job. I like that already. And I think that's going to be really what's hinging upon if he gets this job or not. If Jerry is on board with not only Kellen but his staff, and I actually think that he's completely on board with Kellen. I just think that he's worried about some of these staff picks because you remember Mike McCarthy whenever he first came in, yeah, sure, he had Nolan as the DC, um, but they handpicked Kellen as that offensive coordinator for him. And then after Nolan failed, they brought in Dan Quinn as the DC without really Mike's, say in the matter. So I want a coach that comes in with his own staff, lays everything out the way he wants it laid out, and basically tells Jerry, listen, if you want me here as your head coach, I'm bringing my guys in. I'm doing it my way. I don't care about how you want to do stuff. Your facet of what you need to do is figure out the draft with Will McClay, and then figure out the team building aspect to get me some guys in free agency that I can also use. Um, this dictatorship with handpicking DCs and OCs for whatever coach you want to get. I don't think it works. I really don't. One of the things that really has worked for the 49ers, and yes, they have a bad year this year, but they're constantly developing coaches underneath the guys that are the main coordinators. Every single year, they internally promote a guy that's been in that system, knows what they want to do. That's the type of culture you need to build with this team. If you want to have the commitment of going with Kellen Moore, you have to be willing to have his own guys get into the building. He's been around the league a couple times now. He went to the Chargers. He's been at the Eagles now. He has the ability to not only coach against the NFC East because he's familiar with what the Eagles want to do. He's played against the Commanders now numerous times, being the OC for the Eagles and the OC for the Cowboys. Um, and the Giants can't be looked down upon as long as they get a quarterback this cycle. This is going to be a competitive division moving forward. So you've got to figure out what can we do to evolve, because right now we're stuck into this purgatory of the revolving door. New faces come in, but to like the building, they're new faces, but they're retreads of other teams' coaches, of other teams' philosophies and stuff. I want the new stuff. And sure, Kellen Moore isn't new to us, but he does have he's not under that same he's not from like a Shanahan tree. He's not from these specific offensive trees. He has his own philosophy and way of doing things. I kind of do like that. Now I'm on record saying if it was my team, I would be looking at a guy that has uh, been proven to be a smart guy, learning under one of these coordinator or one of these head coaches that come from the Shanahan tree, come from um, that new evolution of offense where they use the motions, they utilize the run game, and those not only like the power gap schemes, but they also use them in the stretch run game and all that stuff. Um, it's now here's something that just dropped. It seems like Kellen Moore is now the current front runner to become the next Cowboys head coach, per John Machota. Uh, he was the first interview the Joneses thinks highly of. He was the first interview, and the Joneses think highly of the former Cowboys quarterback and offensive coordinator. Clear on social media that fans, hold on, let me spin it more, would prefer Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson went to the Bears, and Deion Sanders over Moore. Jones did acknowledge before the season finale that he takes some fan opinion into account when making an evaluation of the team's head coach position. I don't know how much I buy that last statement about Jerry caring anything about what we have to say. However, if it was, and there's some people that were on my Twitter telling me like, "Hey, Brian Schottenheimer's name is being floated around, so people take more easily to Kellen Moore's signing and hiring." Um, I can agree with that. Absolutely can agree with that. But at the end of the day, I am so much more excited about a Kellen Moore scheme for a couple reasons. Firstly, I truly believe Kellen Moore will work with Dak Prescott at a personal level, at a level where he sees him not as just a player of mine, but an equal on trying to figure things out and what works best. Dak Prescott and the Cowboys have had top offenses under Kellen Moore. Say what you want about their inadequacies and their failures in the postseason, but if you tell me that Kellen Moore brings in a legitimate DC into this building, a guy that is a leader of men and a guy that is a motivator, I would like to hire. I wouldn't love it. I wouldn't love it, but I would like it. And I certainly would like it much better than Brian Schottenheimer. If you guys were not in the chat earlier or whatever, say what up in the chat, and also go to my Twitter page and check out the link that I dropped, where you can actually join the chat, and I can pull you up on screen if you want to go video, or if you just want to go audio, we'll pull you up and you can talk some Cowboys football with me right now. Super just impromptu show. I don't really even know what I'm going on about. Just, I guess, the Cowboys being the Cowboys. Regardless, right now Brian Schottenheimer supposedly is the betting favorite, but it seems like internally some of the stuff John Machoda's seen, Kellen Moore is the favorite. So seems like those two guys are like the top guys. Aaron Glenn has been discussed, and we will see what happens with him. But I mean, his defense. I mean, yes, missing a ton of players, but his defense did not have a good showing in in that game against the Commanders. So yeah, it's bad. B Bird, Kellen has some top passing offenses with Dak. Check the playoffs. The run game is prevalent. Um, yes, listen, Kellen is not the worst hire. I know there's a lot of Cowboys fans that have said, uh, Kellen is not the coach. And I've been on record. I don't want Kellen as the coach. However, I can see the plan, and I can put away my own feelings about it, and get to that positive point where I'm like, okay, I can get behind a Kellen Moore offense, because I know uh, he's bringing in his own staff supposedly. He's got guys lined up, and if Jerry agrees to that, then we will know, hey, this is solely on Kellen. It's not on Jerry and the front office to make um, these other hires, like a Dan Quinn, like a Brian Schottenheimer. I like that respect of it. I like the fact that Kellen and Dak have rapport. They were both quarterbacks for the Cowboys. Kellen was his quarterback coach originally, then his offensive coordinator, now possibly his head coach. I actually do like that, because, like I said, Dak doesn't have to completely reset his offensive scheme and all of that terminology and everything like that. It's not a hard reset. It's like a soft reset for Dak. He's learning stuff he has already learned in the past. It will probably come a lot more natural to Dak this time around, because he's seen it in the past. I do like that respect. Um, can Kellen change the culture? That is what I'm wondering. Like I said, if he has his handpicked staff out and ready to fire off, and it's his guys, and he's been around the league a little bit more now with the Chargers, with the Eagles, um, I think he might have some guys he can bring in to to. I don't want to say completely change this culture, because I don't know that Kellen is a culture guy, if that makes sense. Like Dan Campbell, he's a culture guy. Kellen is more on the philosophical scheme um, type of head coach, where he's like a McVay, he's like a Shanahan in those regards, where it's more about the scheme than him just being a motivator. And I personally think that Mike McCarthy was a little bit more of a motivator than led on. I don't entirely trust that he I think that he wanted to have a lot of say so in the building, but he was incredibly paranoid. Brian Broaddus has said that on separate shows about him just being super paranoid, because he didn't have the long term contract. He was worried about Dan Quinn whenever he was here. He was worried about Kellen Moore until that he got canned, and well, not canned, but whenever they parted ways. So it's one of those things, man. I let's just say I have way more trust in Kellen Moore changing the culture than I would Brian Schottenheimer. That's where I'll put that. My guy Frankie, what up, Frankie? Can we discuss the damn front office? It does not matter who the coach is. Coaches come and go. The only constant in the last 30 years is JJ. Yeah. At the top of the show, I talked about that some, Frankie. I just, at the end of the day, and like I mentioned, we've seen Tony Romo, we've seen Dak Prescott, an undrafted free agent and a fourth round pick. We've seen these guys play good ball, like good ball, like nearly all pro. Or, well, I guess Dak has had an all pro. Tony Romo, I almost want to say he was a second team all pro, if I'm not mistaken, in 2014. Regardless, like, we've seen them have those great seasons, but the constant is the Joneses. You've seen head coaches come through here, former head coaches, former coordinators. You have Dan Quinn now. You have Kellen Moore now. You have Wade Phillips, who won a championship. You have Sean Payton, who have won championships for separate organizations. So you can't tell me you haven't had the right guys in here in the past. You can't tell me that some of the players that you've had in here were championship pedigree type players. DeMarcus Ware, you've had, I'm not even going to list all the guys, because there's so many that have come through here that should have been able to win a championship with this team. But the constant is the Joneses team building philosophy has not been good enough. That is the only consistent thing that I've been shown proven over time. Um, and Frankie goes on, the culture is determined by JJ. Football becomes a sideshow. Jones is not interested in winning football games. He admitted it in the damn Netflix documentary. Yeah, I didn't even watch the Netflix thing. I've been I don't want to say I've lost my love for Cowboys football. Um, but it's become way more apparent that it's almost like they say never meet your heroes, because, like, the guy you see on screen is not the guy you're going to see in the and the back room or whatever. I think the veil has been torn from the Cowboys for me, where I see who they are and what they want to do. They care about making money. It's unfortunate as hell that we have to watch this team continue to put on this masquerade, continue to put on this sideshow, Hollywood uh, documentary series about this team being, oh, we're ready to make a Super Bowl run, yada 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 yada, but they don't utilize every single aspect to make this film the best it can be. Um, it's unfortunate as hell. It really is. B Bird, I think we need a coach that can demand accountability from players. Yes. I think that's one thing you would get if Robert Saleh was the hire. That is one thing you are getting with Robert Saleh. He's a motivator, and he will have your defense playing good defensive ball. I don't think that he's ever had a less than a top 10 offense whenever he's been a coordinator and even as a head coach. His Jets team when he was a head coach was a great defense. Whenever they fired him, they dropped down a substantial amount after they canned Robert Saleh. So that's one of those guys, like, if you could tell me Kellen Moore, head coach slash offensive coordinator, calling the plays, and then you could get me Robert Saleh as a defensive coordinator. Oh baby, we're cooking. I really do feel like we're cooking. Now, I don't love Kellen Moore's scheme, or not scheme, just play design from that aspect. I do like what he does as far as understanding that he has to use the short, intermediate, deep parts of the field. He has to open up stuff underneath. He has to use that play action, that motion, and stuff like that. I think he gets that. I think that he knows that the NFL is evolving to a point where you have to be willing to mix in things and show the defense different things. Um, I just don't know that he always designs the best plays. And so, how do you combat that? You ask Dak, you ask CD, you ask whatever running back comes in from college. Hey, what's some stuff that you did at college that worked against this type of defense? What's some stuff that you did that you really liked? And you ask every single person on your team that means something to your organization, that if we're going to make a serious run, we've got to get this guy involved. You go to CD specifically. Hey, CD, what's some stuff that you would love to see in this new offense that we're creating here? What's some stuff that specifically has gotten you open and made you feel most a part of this team? That's how you awake a fire in somebody and allow them to not only buy into your program but feel like they're contributing. You know what I mean? So that's something that you can easily input to change the culture, making it not only a me project. Oh, I'm going to be the savior of the Cowboys, come in here and get us to the Super Bowl, but making it a we project, a group project, figuring out what different players like to do. Um, Dak Prescott has went on record and say, "Hey, Mike McCarthy, he showed me this drop back system and this type of stuff that has really helped me marry my drops to the routes that are happening in front of me." And he gave credit to Mike for doing that. So if that's something that Dak likes to do, and he understands that's something that has really allowed him to grow as a player, even in whatever year that was, year 8 or whatever of his career, why would you not try to figure out what worked best for your players and grab it from that offense and implement it into your offense you're bringing in? I think that's just a no brainer. What's going on, bro? I am down for Saleh or Shoddy as head coach, but leaning towards Saleh. What up, TNT Sports? Glad to have you a part of the show. Guys, if you are on the YouTube side, please do leave a like. It only helps me grow and continue to put up more videos. I do have a draft show every single Wednesday. I do tune in on my show sometimes, but it's probably going to be on my parent network, which is the Grid Networks thing. It'll also be streaming on my Twitter as well, though, so you should be able to find me there. But every single Wednesday, like 7:30 Central Standard Time. Now, I went over the shoddy thing. I hate to repeat it over again, but since you're tuned in, I'll go over it with a quick PowerPoint. Shoddy will bring back the running game. Shoddy will bring back not having every single thing on Dak's shoulders, which is good. That's a positive thing you have to look for in your offensive coordinator. Do not put everything on your quarterback's hands. And like you can look at the other people or the other quarterbacks that are in the championship games right now. They're guys that are not all and like whatever you can say Mahomes can carry whoever, but he still has one of the best head coaches the history of the game has ever seen in Andy Reid. And he makes it easier on Patrick Mahomes just as much as Mahomes makes it easy on Andy Reid. Um, you also factor in their defenses. All of those teams, except for the Commanders, but the Commanders' defense somehow, some way, has gotten a lot of turnovers during this playoff run. Their defenses know how to create pressure on the quarterback and cover. All of these teams. Um, the Bills a little bit less so than years past. Excuse me. Um, but man, they say what you want. I think that Lamar should win the MVP based on his season, but Josh Allen's probably played the best of his career this past season, and not with a lot of weapons. I'll tell you for sure. So regardless, though, you're looking at teams that understand. Hey, our quarterbacks can't be asked to do everything. Um, I think that the Eagles understand that what they have in Jalen Hurts. I think that Eagles fans they will tell you they moved off of Carson Wentz because they felt like he wasn't good enough. I will say, okay, sure, if you want to say that, sure. And they put their money where their mouth was, and they drafted Jalen Hurts in the second round as a replacement guy that could possibly step in there. However, they have also utilized not only the trade market, trading for AJ Brown, not only trading capital in the current draft to get capital, a lot more capital back in years, you know, after that draft, um, to allow them to go and trade up for way better players. They've used cap manipulation in their favor, and they have understood. They have. I don't know exactly how they do it, but I really believe they have understanding about what each player is, and they have evaluations on those certain players. So they know Jalen Hurts is really good on the deep ball outside of the hashes. Along the sideline, he's great, and he's not going to put it in harm's way. Middle of the field deep balls, that's a little bit of a problem for Jalen Hurts. So how do you combat that? Well, we'll just play design with those things in mind. We'll run the seven to heavens. We'll run these corner routes. We'll run this. We'll run that. They're not running all of those middle of the field things unless they're shorter and immediate for Jalen Hurts because they understand who he is as a player. Whereas the Cowboys have said, "Hey, Dak Prescott, we've paid you like an elite guy. We want you to be an elite guy. You better be an elite guy. If you're not an elite guy, then we're not going to pay you." And that that philosophy is what's gotten the Joneses in trouble. You can't always expect everybody to play on their A game every single time they step out on a football field. That should be common knowledge, in my opinion. You can't expect Micah Parsons to be Micah Parsons if he's consistently getting doubled on the edge or chipped by running backs. You have to figure out creative, smart ways to get him involved in football games. CeeDee Lamb, they finally understood, hey, CD is our best weapon. We should probably implement him a little bit more into the game plan. And that's why he's had 130 plus catches every single season since they started doing that. You got to figure those things out. And once you start figuring out the player evaluations, not only on your own team, then your guys who are pro personnel guys can start figuring out other guys on other teams that aren't being used correctly. That's how you got a J-Ron Curse in here, and he was doing good. He's the only person I can remember for a separate team that we brought in and we made him what he was. Um, so that's one part of the coaching and philosophy shift that we need to have. Bird says, I would prefer to have a defensive coordinator as a head coach. Hire an up and coming OC. The reason is that the great defenses carry you further, and former DCs would require the offensive coordinator to run the ball. See, that is one thing I will admit. I'm not a big fan of defensive coordinators as head coaches solely because I love when my DC is just all he's focused is on the defense. Um, and so like a Mike Vrabel, a Sala, those guys, I just feel like, man, they're so much better DCs than they ever were head coaches. Um, and offensive coordinators, I feel like whenever they get the head coach uh, position, they can still be in the offensive side and understanding what they want to do. They have that situational awareness of like, hey, listen, like OC, if he's not running the plays, OC, listen, you got four downs here, you can do whatever you want, yada yada yada. But maybe this will work against this defense. They have that understanding. Now, you made a good point, though, about the former DCs requiring the offensive coordinator to run the ball because they understand how drained defensive players get and how much of a toll that puts on defensive players. If the offense is always going hurry up, they're keeping the same personnel on the field. As a defense, you can't substitute or you're going to get a penalty. So that is incredibly draining. So you have to have that knowledge in your head. We got to run the ball to give our defense a break. And we have to not only run it, but we got to do it effectively. The Cowboys in the past have not ran the ball effectively these past two seasons. Um, Now, one of those seasons, I would chuck up more to Tony Pollard being, coming off that broken leg. This past season, I really think it was a pissing match between Mike McCarthy and Jerry Jones of who they think should be the running back one. I think that Jerry Jones made a false promise to Ezekiel Elliott to come in here and say, "Hey, you're going to be RB1," and that was not lived up to. And Mike didn't sign off on it. Mike didn't agree to it. It's said that Jerry Jones went off on his own and traded a fourth round pick for Trey Lance. There's so many stuff that has caused us to get into this situation. I want continued communication between my head coach, my owner, my GM, my head of player personnel, scouting department, all of those guys. I want them in a room once a week, and I don't know how it happens with the Joneses and how they organize this stuff, but I want them in a room once a week. They're putting all their problems on the table. They're saying, hey, listen, this is what we want to do. We want to switch our defense to the 3-4. So you need to find these guys that have that scheme versatility to play the linebacker, play the edge position. We can't only have edges on this team that can't switch back and play linebacker. If you want to go to, hey, we're going to be running more corners, we're going to be running more whatever it is, you have to have that communication between your coaches and your scouting department and your front office to figure out, oh, okay, hey, we understand what you're wanting to do on the back end of the defense. We with where we're at on the offense, we have to we have to get a running back, a wide receiver, all this stuff. But we found this guy from Las Vegas who's fallen out of favor. But he in college he did this. Would you be interested in us acquiring him? Just that communication I feel like has been so lost on the Cowboys. And I think that's one of the biggest things where when we talk about losing Dan Quinn, for all of his woes and not being able to stop the run, he was very, very good with communication to scouts, understanding, hey, this is what we're looking for. We're looking for those lengthy corners that can play press man. We're looking for those linebackers that have versatility. They have the boundary to boundary ability. They're speedy guys. They don't have to be the biggest guys, and that's what got him in trouble with the run game. I will say that, but it allowed him to not only gain rapport with the scouts, but also do some scouting himself. I mean, for all the stuff about Dan Quinn drafting Quentin Bohanna and Boss Man Fat and Eric Scott Jr., he also, give him some credit, he was also a pivotal part of getting Deron Bland and Jaron Curse here. He was one of, like, legitimately, you got to give him some credit for that stuff. So I would just like to see a little bit more marriage between the front office, the scouts, and then the coaching staff. All three of those guys. And then if you really want to make Dak Prescott feel like a franchise quarterback, involve him in some damn discussions about players who he might want in his offense, who he might feel like would be a good scheme fit. Like, come on. You talk about Aaron Rodgers and LeBron James for being divas and always dictating what the front office does. Some of that stuff is good sometimes. Like, let's just be honest. Some of that stuff is good. Now, don't give them the keys to whatever they want to do, but some of it's good. Um, my guy Frank Mueller says, I would really love to see Dak with a run game and a proper wide receiver too. Look at the Eagles. Hurts is not playing his game, and he has fewer than 180 yards in the last game, despite of AJ Brown, and the Eagles won. Running makes offenses more unpredictable, and Dak is a much better quarterback than Hurts. Running game and a second wide receiver. Watch him cook. Yeah, I completely agree with you. Firstly, with the wide receiver two thing, man, I really, really like Ashton Genty. Um, he's one of the higher players on my board right now. However, that running back class is deep, man. It is deep, and that's even with the Penn State guys coming back to college. Um, I'm leaning wide receiver round one, even though I don't love this wide receiver class. You tell me you got Ted McMillan and you had to trade up even to get him. I just think that that's going to help Dak so much, not having to rely specifically on CeeDee Lamb. Always laser focused on CeeDee Lamb, um, and that helps CeeDee Lamb. Like I went to that Baltimore game, man. Baltimore bracketed CeeDee Lamb every single chance they got. If they weren't bracketing him, they were doubling him, just straight up doubling him. Um, that's hard on a on an offense, knowing that. And then also, I would say a lot of people talk about Matt Stafford and Calvin Johnson back in those days where Matt Stafford had a lot of interception problems and stuff like that because he was force feeding Johnson the ball a little bit. Whenever Johnson retired, Matt Stafford actually had a better season that next year, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe it was 2 years after that. But he started spreading the ball around a little bit more. That same Baltimore game when CD was having the whatever his little fit on the sideline, whenever Dallas started to come back in that game, whatever you call it, prevent defense, whatever you want to call it, false hope, whatever. Dak was spreading the ball around a little bit more. Wasn't so laser focused on CD Lamb. Was making some plays a little bit. So if you tell me you can get a legitimate wide receiver two in this building and not be laser focused on CD Lamb, I think that helps everyone involved. Dak Prescott, CD Lamb, and the offense. Go get yourself a wide receiver and uh and then get your running back later on. Um let's see. It is deep. Genty would be awesome. I would go for wide receiver first because the running back class is so deep, as you say. Yep. I'm head in the water, pounding out these wide receivers, running backs right now in my scouting and my film watching and stuff like that. There's some really good running backs, man. I'm excited because this class, like last year, it seemed kind of deep. This class is much deeper. I feel like the talent there from just a pure running perspective is off the charts. Now, there's some guys that aren't going to be the pass protectors. There's some guys that are not going to have receiving games. But just a running perspective, I feel great about a lot of these guys. Can't go wrong with one from Ohio State in day two. I don't think Igbuka is going to make it to day two unless he has a bad combine. I kind of see Igbuka in the same light as I did JSN. Not a great athlete, but good enough, and he's really good finding those soft zone spots. And I like him, don't love him. But I can say that about a lot of these wide receivers. Minus Tet, I really do think that Tet is one of those guys that come around only so often because of that big body. He's not the greatest in contested catch. Really, he just wins over the middle. He knows how to create separation, and he's incredibly good at catching in different spots, up high, down low, behind him, all sorts of stuff. He just has a wide catch radius. I really like that about him. Um, my guy, B Bird, DQ wasn't the one that chose LVE over Wagner 2 times. The Joneses did. He was forced to play a safety at linebacker due to injuries. Yeah, I will say you are right where he was kind of forced that season to play a safety at linebacker, but let's not act like he didn't play KZ at linebacker like in years past. Like he was playing smaller linebackers, um, or or safeties at linebacker, um, and Wagner. I mean, at that point when we could have got Wagner, sure, like that would have been a great signing. But now Wagner's not the same player. Like he'll still get tackles, but he's not the same. He's gonna tackle you behind the line of scrimmage kind of guy. He's gonna tackle you 4 yards after you got, past the line of scrimmage. But he's gonna make the right read. And that's one of those things. It's invaluable when you have guys that are like a Damone Clark. I hate to use his name, but he makes some just bad reads sometimes. So um, that's one of the things. It sucks losing DeMarvion Overshown. And Demo has said, "Hey, I'm gonna be back for 2025." I seriously hope and pray he's right because we need a guy like that. That's not only a competitor, but a guy that flies around the defense. And yeah, it's funny because I was so critical of the Cowboys last year in their draft, and the year prior I was absolutely pissed at the draft. But last year I was critical because I'm like, Nealand, like I like the player, but we have Sam Williams, we have D Law, and then D Law went down, Sam Williams went down, Nealand pick feels great. I was like, Maurice Luafau, like what are we doing? And then what happens? Demo gets hurt. Damone Clark doesn't seem like the same player. And really, he's never quite lived up to the hype. Um, Solid player. Just he really needs to get the cognitive part of his game figured out. He plays so much better when he has a cerebral linebacker playing that middle spot, and he can be that roam linebacker. But that's beside the point. I think that their draft last year, for all the hate that I gave it because of the question, I'm like, what? Oh, where's our wide receiver? We needed CD a weapon. We needed this. We needed that. And I hated the Guyton pick. I was just like, what are we doing? Like, and I didn't want to say that on the show, but I had been on record to say Guyton was the most overrated player in that draft. Regardless, hindsight's 2020. I think there's so many problems you got to get it figured out. Most importantly, though, you've already signed yourself up with Dak Prescott. The people that say you got to drop Dak Prescott, you got to trade Dak Prescott, that's not in the realm of possibility. Stop talking about it. Here's what you got to do. You've got to figure out how do we best utilize Dak Prescott? How do we best figure out how to use CeeDee Lamb and Jake Ferguson? Because Jake Ferguson, yes, he had a down season, but he was better. He was better with Dak than any other quarterback that we've seen him play with. Trey Lance, Cooper Rush. He's tied to Dak Prescott. So we got to figure out what's happening with Ferguson. If he's going to be their their tight end one, or if it's going to be a tight end by committee. And then get him another weapon. That's the start of things. Secondly, you've got to figure out how to bring in a culture guy, but also a guy that can scheme creative, evolved ways to get their best players the ball. I think that's going to be Kellen Moore, and it's not an exciting pick for this team, but at the end of the day, it seems like the obvious choice. LVE and Clark were our starting linebackers. Both had some serious neck injuries, so they made business decisions all over the field. LVE, man, so much hope for LVE whenever he first came out. I liked his tape at Boise State. He just understood. And this goes back to the 8-man football thing. I think that he understood really how to track and diagnose. The thing is, his body just gave up. He was on the same. He was cut from the same cloth as a Sean Lee. Not quite as cerebral as Sean Lee, but man, that rookie season, like he looked like he was the rebirth of like Brian Urlacher or something like that. So, yeah, it hurt me to see LVE just continue to get riddled with those injuries. Clark, though, I know back in LSU he was such a good linebacker, but in the NFL he just hasn't proven that he can be a diagnose, read, and attack kind of linebacker. He's more of the guy that is, let's cut off this section of the field, and if the play comes this way, you got to overextend and try to get there. He just doesn't seem like he can read it, and That's unfortunate because he does have the athleticism to do some stuff like that. It's just the mental part of the game isn't there for him. Um, like I said, guys, hey, I dropped the link on my Twitter page. If anybody wants to get on, and you don't have to go on video, you can just get on the audio side of things, and you can be a part of the video. This is more just talking ball, man. It's not about making a crazy good product of the show or anything like that. I just haven't been on in a while, and it's good to chill with you guys with Cowboys Nation and just talk about this stuff. Another name that was floated out there, Pete Carroll. Now, Pete Carroll gives you the option of this: head coach, a culture guy, has ties to college and NFL game. So if you really wanted to, you could figure out, hey, is there a DC that we could hire and bring in here that's creative and has some exotic looks from college or around the league? He can also carry Brian Schottenheimer on as the offensive coordinator because they work together in Seattle. And that is intriguing because it means Dak Prescott doesn't have to learn an entire new offense, doesn't have to learn the terminology, doesn't have to learn a lot of the stuff that you would have if you had to go to a new offensive coordinator. Um, I also really think that Pete Carroll knows how to coach and motivate guys. He's one of those guys that's like an old guy, but he seems so much like more young and refreshing as a head coach than a lot of the old guys that are in the league. Wouldn't be the worst hire. Like I mentioned, he would be a guy that's like, okay, like you can sell me on this, but I'm not excited. Like, what would have broke Cowboys Nation is if Ben Johnson was announced as the Cowboys head coach. That would have broke Cowboys Nation where they're like, holy crap, we did something. These guys that they seem to be interviewing right now are safe plays, and guys, truthfully, if I'm being just honest, they're guys that um, are only being interviewed by the Cowboys. Now, Kellen Moore, he's going to get some more interviews. They supposedly, rumor is they put in a interview request for Cliff Kingsbury. He's going to get some more interviews from other teams, and we'll see what happens with Aaron Glenn. Those seem like guys that are getting interviews from other teams for head coach positions. Robert Saleh, I think, had an interview with the Jags, um, which was I don't know if he already had it or not. I can't remember, but so he has one other team. I personally just don't believe that the Joneses are going to hire Saleh as a head coach, unless he just completely wowed them. And then Leslie Frazier, I just like that's the kind of guy you bring in just to meet the requirement of the Rooney Rule, and I just like, what the hell are you doing? Like, that's such a joke. I like the Rooney Rule and the idea of bringing in minorities that typically wouldn't get the opportunity to get in a room with an owner and try to pitch themselves as a head coach. I love the rule as far as that goes because that just opens up better avenues. It allows guys to not have, um, you know, it allows the guys to sell themselves where they typically wouldn't be able to. That's a great rule to have in place when you use it effectively. Leslie Frazier, bringing him in for an interview, that is not an effective way of using the Rooney Rule. Complete joke that they even brought him in. Frank, EJ Savage saw the cuts by Jones cut in the back from last year. Nice, bro. Would have loved to win that bad boy this year. Frank, don't bring that back up, man. I'm literally, Frank. I literally, and I'm not even trying to be funny. If Jalen Hurts didn't get injured, that game that he got injured, um, I would have won the fantasy football championship 2 times in a row. And that's not even a joke. He only needed like 16 points for me to win. I only got 5 points out of him. And on top of that, I had James Conner, who went down in the third quarter, who was also playing out of his mind that day. So yeah, if Jalen Hurts doesn't get injured, um, I likely win that championship because I blew everybody out of the water fantasy or the championship week when I was playing for third place. Beside the point. But I was just really hammering to try to get that repeat. But yeah, it sucks. But I believe that who got it? Dak Attack, I think. Whoever that was in the Dak Attack in the Fantasy Football League, Cowboys Cave got the championship. So that was awesome to see that. Yeah, I think that, man, I don't know. Since nobody's jumping on here, I'm just going crazy, just talking to myself. Um, let's see. I'm trying to see if there's any more stuff that's come out. Let's see. Um, oh yeah, unlucky, says Frank. Yeah, it sucks, but it is what it is. Lions DC Aaron Glenn is scheduled for an in-person meeting with the Jets on Tuesday. If no deal is reached, he'll meet with the Saints in person on Wednesday. Something to keep in mind is the Bears job went to Ben Johnson. Mike McCarthy was one of the leading candidates in that respect for the Bears. Seems like Ben Johnson went to the Bears. So Mike McCarthy's last real hope to be a head coach, in my opinion, is the Saints. So he's got to be almost hoping that Aaron Glenn takes the Jets job, and that leaves the Saints really open for Mike McCarthy. So that's something to definitely watch. Glenn also had interest from Jacksonville and Las Vegas, though no meeting is set. The Jets, the Saints have viewed as frontrunner. One of the most interesting things I'm going to be on the lookout for. I really don't think Dion is a serious candidate for the Cowboys, but I'm telling you, if you see the Raiders trade up, if like let's say that the Raiders trade up to 1 or 2, and they almost know Shadur is their guy. I honestly think Dion is a legitimate candidate for the Raiders. I really do. My guy Steven Mack in the building. What up? My guy Cuts by Jones. We were just talking about your cut back here, Jones. Was cracking homies. Our next head coach is known. Bones just did a lateral to Tennessee. Did he? Wow. 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 Where did you see that? I'm gonna have to check that out. Let me just type it up. Bones Fossil. Um, I'm not seeing that, but maybe I just have his name spelled wrong. Let me see if Adam Schefter put anything on about that. It's all Ben Johnson junk. Ben Johnson has been assembling his star-studded coaching staff. The leading candidate to become his defensive coordinator is Saints head coach Dennis Allen. Wow. Steven, post in the chat where you've seen that John Fossil uh report at. Is it from a team source? That's interesting. That's super interesting because I would imagine if Schottenheimer was the head coach, you would still retain John Fossil. Um, let's see. Let me just type in Fossil. Someone tell Ryan Stonehouse to get his arm loose. Oh shoot! Titans are hiring John Bones Fossil as their special teams coordinator. Brian Callahan. Wow. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So Patrick No C Walker said it. Um. Dang, that's interesting. Yeah, I think that tells you a lot on what the case is because it's said to be kind of leaked that Kellen Moore did in fact have his coaching staff kind of picked out. So that's huge. That's definitely a tell in what the Joneses are thinking. Man, we're not getting a serious coach at this franchise. Y'all know how much JJ paid for Mike McCarthy, $4 million a year, ridiculous salary for an actual for a caliber like Mike McCarthy. Yeah, Jerry is not paying people to be the head coach anymore. You know that Jerry has it in his little thick skull that this is such a coveted job. This is the best job to be as an NFL head coach. Um, it's not anymore, Jerry. Newsflash, it's really not. So, but I will say one thing about Kellen Moore. I really do think that he wants to be the head coach here. I think that he was made a promise. Hey, you're going to be the next guy up, and then Jerry, whatever happened with Mike and Jerry, it caused them to basically be like, hey, we're going to part ways. We made this commitment to Mike, and as a result, he wants to run the offense, and Kellen wasn't willing to let him take over the play calling. That's where it was the mutual agreement to separate, and that's where you got that whole situation. Um, JJ, oh wait, let me see this. If Mike McCarthy can't get a job, does he come back on a 2 to 3 year? Oh God, that would be the worst case scenario. I'm telling you right now, because not only did you not make the commitment to Mike, you drew it out, and then nobody else in the league wants Mike, and he comes back as your sloppy seconds. That's terrible. I would I would legitimately just go to making draft videos. I wouldn't even put like all the stars and all that stuff behind me. Okay, well, I'm lazy, so I probably wouldn't take that down. But I would definitely not make my Cowboys show a Cowboy show. I'd just change it all up and just do like draft content, and I'd talk about the Cowboys still, but it just wouldn't be Cowboys centric. It's just it's as simple as that. JJ not paying serious money for the next head coach. That's why we see names like Moore and Shoddy. You've got a point, Frank. You have got a point. Aikman killed him on TV the other day. Just like Derrick Henry, we didn't even call Ben Johnson and let him tell us no. Yeah, yeah, that's one of the most confusing things is not only do you not call the guy to see where he's at, but you don't even have enough sense to try and figure out if you're even like a possible, or if he has any interest in your team, if he has anything to say about your team. Nothing? You don't even call him? Like Derrick Henry is the one that's like, would he have been as good as he was with the Ravens this year with the Cowboys? Probably not. Just being frank about where our offensive line was. In Mike Solari, good God, do not retain him. He is terrible. I'm done with Solari. He's terrible. Don't ever bring him back. He was coaching with Tom Landry, for God's sake. Don't bring him back. Um, but still, Derrick Henry wanted to be a Cowboy. He trains here in the offseason. Like he wanted to be a part of your team. That's one of the biggest things I think is missing from this team and this culture is you don't have players that want to be Cowboys. Like sure they get to play on prime time, and sure, they get to have or play in a state that doesn't have the income tax, but legitimately that star doesn't bear that much damn weight anymore. And it's sad that Jerry Jones still is delusional and thinks that it does. Let's see. Adam Schefter just dropped something new 1 minute ago. Um, let's see. Okay, just statistics about Ben Johnson's stuff. Okay. Leslie Frazier interview completed as head coach 3 minutes ago. Yeah, yeah, that's just a complete joke. Um, Steven, if you want to get on here and talk ball, bro, pop on. I dropped the link. Dropped the link on my Twitter. Um, I'll probably wrap it up here in just a bit. Drop in the chat who your guys' number one candidate is. Who you would really like. Oh, Steven's already saying it. At this point, give me Saleh. Let's give Micah the defensive-minded head coach. Yeah, you haven't had a defensive-minded head coach since Wade Phillips. So, um, you know, I wouldn't hate it. Like I said, like I mentioned to my guy up here, B Bird, he's a guy that's going to motivate guys. He's a guy that is, um, He's a guy that's going to have your defense playing good for sure. Like, I don't think he's ever had a non-top 10 defense, and most of the time his defense is top 5. So he would definitely figure out the defensive woes, which could catapult you into having playoff success. Like, never has Dak had the luxury of having a defense to hold other teams under 20 points, except for that one loss against the Niners that we should have won. It was like 12-17 or whatever the hell it was. Um, yeah, TNT Sports, they need to replace Solari with Mark Colombo. Bang. That's one of the coaching hires I would really like. Um, you know, in the uh, all player to coach team or coaching staff that I would like to see. I wouldn't like to see it, but it would actually serve as to being okay. Yeah, that could work. Kellen Moore, head coach. Um, John Kitna, quarterback coach again. Um, Mark Colombo, O line coach. Sean Lee as linebacker coach, and who am I forgetting for DC? I had a name. I can't even think of it now. Regardless, yeah, I wouldn't hate that. Somebody has told me, Witten for tight end coach. Um, like the more I think about that, like I don't know, like Martellus Bennett has been on record to say that Jason Witten did not help him a lick whenever he was a tight end under him. So I don't know how that would work, but now he is a head coach of a high school. He has experience trying to coach young men, and so maybe it does work out. I mean, he is one of the best tight ends of all time. So, um, but high school to NFL head coach jump is insane. If that happened, I would be pissed. High school to tight end coach, former tight end, like all pro tight end, I would like it. I would be okay with it. Hope not, because that would break me even more. Yeah. Um man, it's interesting to think about who would be the offensive coordinator under um Kellen Moore. I would want to hear. I would be very interested to see that. But like I mentioned earlier, like Kellen Moore, I guarantee you he would be working with Dak Prescott, with the players, figuring out what they want to implement into the offense, figuring out what works best to isolate them in certain sets. Um, so yeah, I come a lot more around to the idea of Kellen Moore than I do Brian Schottenheimer. And that's not a knock on Brian Schottenheimer as much as I just don't think he's head coach material. He was passed up for the Jets job um, whenever he was in Seattle. They let him go. They didn't think that he was the right move for a head coach anywhere else, and he had some good seasons with Seattle as an offensive coordinator. So it's interesting to think about, like, why did he never get a chance as a head coach? Um, I don't know. I don't know that that would be the right move. Um, Steven, about to drive my daughter to dance, or I would. No worries, brother. Like I said, I'm about to get off. If you guys are interested in draft stuff, I'm going over the top 10 running backs this week on Wednesday night. That's over at the Grid Network, GRYD Network. I'll also stream it on Twitter, so you can figure out the link or whatever. I'll drop the link maybe in the chat for my Twitter or whatever as well. But Faux Show had a good time. Chatted up with everybody that tuned in and just talked some ball. Hopefully, this carousel of coaching and all that stuff will get figured out soon. My guy Frank says, great show. Try to keep up more often with you. Also, like to jump on today. I need to get to bed after a very long time. Or today, I need to go to bed after a very long night. Sleepy as F. Peace. Peace out, Frank. Appreciate you tuning in to the show. I know it's probably late for you there in Germany. And I think it's Germany, right? I'm almost sure. Mueller, I mean, I know Thomas Mueller from the Germany team, national team, and Lamb and all those guys. So, pretty sure it's Germany. Anyways, thanks for tuning in, guys. I don't know how much I'm going to be running on my actual channel the next couple weeks. I'm going to try to actually just drop videos, not make them as much of lives, and just drop videos on specific prospects and whatnot. I feel like that'd be kind of fun. But the draft show for my network, Grid Network, is going to be every other Wednesday, I believe, until we get up closer to the draft. And it's going to be every single Wednesday where we're going to be bringing on guests and whatnot. So make sure you tune into that. And with that being said, catch you next time. Peace.